That one was crazy.
Yeah,
Like I could not believe that she did what she did. Long story short, for the audience, the vice president badmouthed Milei in Spain, and the good thing is that people,
yeah.
right wingers in Spain, they're very faithful to Milei, and they immediately came to say, "Hey, she's bad mouthing you," and so she cannot be kicked out,
Yeah.
but she's just not part of she's not part of actively of
When
meetings and all that. So there's just a respectful relationship, but she has no power inside of the administration anymore.
buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online, go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack, go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum, go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 287, and returning to the forum is Ááron Sepúlveda-Cué. We're going to talk about Javier Milei and some recent controversies, the meme coin, the split with Villarruel, but we're also going to talk about, just what he's accomplished in the past year. How are you, Ááron?
I'm doing great now. Finally, after we get to fix all the technical issues here and there.
Yeah, that's good. Hopefully everything's going well. So yeah. Anyway, so we're now looking at about 15 months of Milei as president. I mean, things are starting to look really good on the domestic front, and we've got some elections coming up this year too. So uh, certainly, but then some things happen. I mean, this whole business with the meme coin just. People say it's not going to affect him though, but I still have a lot of questions about how and why this happened, and I'm just
Not in the elections, but I think there will be a marginal amount of people that, if they wanted to invest in Argentina, they'll probably think about it twice, because
yeah,
it's a bad image. Like some guys were complaining. I said, okay, can you please pay attention to the macroeconomics, inflation, output, employment? Well, yeah. No, wait. One thing is a Twitter a Twitter post, and another one is the macroeconomy. This is no different. You know what? It will be similar. I remember some reporters came to ask me. Remember uh, the GameStop shenanigans? Remember that one?
oh yes,
The
when
price.
they drove up the crypto drove up yeah when a bunch of people had shorted GameStop and a bunch of people went in and then drove up the price, which really shorts shorts can be very risky, and this was a case literally where all the people that shorted the stock ended up losing a ton of money. It was so hilarious the way it happened.
I enjoyed those 2 weeks like nothing, but
Yeah,
reporters were asking me like, "Oh, would this cause a recession?" And I'm like, "No, those markets are like so far away from the real economy that you don't even have, like, it's interesting to know, to let people know what to do, what not to do. But this type of markets, actually, I tend to say that crypto, and in this one, sorry, my Bitcoiners, but in this case, I'm going to include a Bitcoin. It's so outside of the real economy, like the structure of production of goods and services, that it's actually kind of good to have the scandals in those markets, because if they happen in those markets, they do not happen in the regular economy. So it has, like, it doesn't affect anything at all. And one of the traumas that critics of Milei had, it was even on TV. They were asking people around, like, "Oh, did you lose money on the crypto scam of President Milei?" And they were like, "I don't know what that is." Like, most regular people just have no contact with that kind of markets. It has no contact with the structure. It has no contact with employment. So he made a mistake, and I completely criticize him for not being ready to deal with this to deal with the things in this kind of markets. They're interesting markets, but they're not for everyone. Much less for, how to say, for states. I don't think states should be involved in the crypto markets. Have to be allowed, but states should not be involved neither. Like with El Salvador, I thought it was pretty cool that they allowed it, and it was, if you ask me, I thought it was really smart, because mainly for tourism and all that kind of stuff. I thought it was smart. But when the government started buying, that's when I said, okay, this is beyond, because this is not the type of thing that states or governments are supposed to be doing. Getting into markets that are very volatile. Usually, states, all they do is try to fulfill short-term goals of the citizenship, like justice, like, which is what Bukele did. Remember, like, he put lots of people in jail, a lot of the gangs and all that, which for me that makes perfect sense. It's a short-term project, but getting into crypto with tax money or anything at all, like, it's just crazy. Like, I thought it was. And Milei does not have the knowledge to figure out which crypto projects are actually good and which ones are just total garbage. And now he has as many, and he said it. He has to be more protected. There's just no way out of it.
Yeah,
He's too naive.
that's that's why a lot of Bitcoiner orthodox Bitcoiners will just say they're all scams except for Bitcoin, which is a lazy way of doing it, but it does protect you from, because
That's what I thought.
most people in the crypto scene do agree that about 95% of them are scams, but they're not all scams. But it is easier just to say, oh, they're all scams.
Exactly.
So it's kind of and it does take a lot of time to do research. There's really no way. How can you ever really know if somebody is sincerely trying to do something or if they're not really trying? I mean, if we watch sports, how do we know that team out there is really trying to win the game, or maybe they're just trying to throw the game and they want to lose? Because
and all you need is one. You don't need the whole team being involved. You just need one or two involved, and that would already be, how to say, match fixing.
Exactly. You just need one or two really to. And of course, with the nature of the way gambling is, it's often not, they don't try to lose. They just try to, if they're expected to win by 40, they try to win by 10.
Exactly. Like who touches the how does it, who makes the second in soccer is something like that the timing at which the left fullback is gonna touch the ball the second time, not the first one, but the second, and you have to kind of guess the timing. All those kind of ridiculous bettings are now the way that I would recommend someone like Milei to do it will be to tell them, look, these are, and he knows sufficient about finance to figure it out. These are very small markets, so anyone with like above $1 million, they can push up the price in a very short time because they're not very liquid markets. So all they have to do is to start buying one or two at double, triple the price, and then lots of people start pushing up, and then they start selling really quickly and then get out. Why can they do that? Simply because they're very small markets, so they're not very liquid. Anyone with a sufficient large amount, which doesn't even take all that much, can push up prices up and down and cause a lot of trouble. I think, and this is my guess, that he thought that what the Libra thing was going to be was more like people were going to use that technology, like transfer each other value from, how to say, within the Libra blockchain.
Yeah.
But I don't think he figured out that there was an asset there that is going to go up and down like crazy within the blockchain. And I think that's what caused the problem in his confusion. That I don't think he's understanding very well the difference between the blockchain and the asset that is in the because there's no way that such a small asset people can actually borrow and invest on it so that they can open a small business. Like that's just not going to work because that specific asset is not stable enough for you to borrow against, to borrow it, later pay it back, and then sometimes to even borrow against because they're just too unstable. Like there's no way that's gonna work.
Yes.
Like sorry, like the reason why I was and people already do it, by the way, a lot of people already knowledgeable of this, is that having access to the crypto markets in Argentina specifically allows them to start using things like Tether and USDC and all the stable coins. I think Argentinians, some of them already know and they do use it. And then more people start using those ones. Since they're backed by very secure assets, I don't think that's what Argentinians really need. Something that is tethered to the dollar, because that's the money for them. That's how they do that's the unit of account. That's how they do accounting in Argentina. So it makes more sense. It's not the crypto's bad. It's just that you need the specific asset that is stable so that people can easily manage. And these kind of things of prices going up and down like crazy don't happen at all.
Yes, there are, as we've said before, there are cryptocurrencies that are pegged to the prices of the dollar, like USDT, USDC, pegged to the price of the Swiss franc, pegged to the price of the euro. There's even Pax Gold, which is pegged to the price of gold. So and these cryptos are supposed to just reflect whatever the price of the asset is.
There you go.
Yeah. And meme coins, I compared them to baseball cards. They're like a collectible that and when
there's some fake ones.
Yeah. And when you do have a there's a limited number of them, and when you do have a market can crash if there's only so many. If somebody holds, I mean, Eloy Vera Beltran, who was on and wrote this article for a reason, and he points out that when this all started, 84% of the crypto's market cap was owned by just 3 wallets. So these were insiders who had. Yeah.
Some of those ones, yeah, that's exactly the case. You don't know who's managing it because it's not necessarily this. Outside of a Bitcoin, everything else is centralized, so that can actually be affected very quickly.
Well, another thing too is that some cryptos have what they call a pre-mine. Bitcoin does not. I mean, but sometimes they do have a pre-mine before it's mined. There's crypto before it's mined, which is ultimately what is the difference between a commodity and a security. It's there's a lot of differences there, but all this, these tokens existed even though they were just there, which begs the question: well, what stops just more tokens from just being there in the future? What stops them from creating what stops them from creating another supply of these tokens in 10 years? There's a lot of things that can happen there, but yes. And after Milei's post on Twitter, which was on Valentine's Day, his tweet.
It was Valentine's, right? I did not think about that.
And at least according to Eloy, again, 40,000 investors jumped in, and the price went up times 13. So if you invested $100, you ended up with $1,300, which isn't a bad deal. But then after that, it crashed and burned. It hit that peak, and then the original investors started dumping it. And when 3 people control 84% of the asset, they can sink the price pretty quickly. There's always been cases where lots of people have tried to play the market with these things. It's nothing unusual.
Yeah. For example, answering if you don't mind me answering, how to say, Saifedean. I think that's the name of the guy.
Well, we can talk about Saifedean later. I wanted to talk about the crypto stuff right now.
Oh, it's still okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So yes, the issue is it's a very open. The conferences that I've been to in Argentina, they're crypto conferences, and people over there are great. Actually, some of my friends were saying like, "Oh, Milei, why didn't you ask like people from Argentina that knows what's going on?" They're saying, why didn't you just ask local, crypto experts and tell them like, hey, is this actually a good idea or not a good idea? And that did not happen. And it makes sense because right now everyone is trying to get to Milei. And if everyone tries to get to Milei, then he has to start making some distinctions one way or the other, right? And so he's probably just going to give preference always to very large investors.
Yeah.
There's just no way out of it that we can do that. It's just that's how it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, this is the question. I mean, when you're the president of a country, there's all these people who want to talk to you or just shake hands with you, and you don't have the time or the time to shake hands with all these people.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm always amazed, at some of these famous people who apparently do answer all their fan mail. It's really shocking that they're able to figure out a way to do it. So you have these people who you have, your secretary or your agent or your gatekeeper, who does that,
and they can be wrong. This is the problem, that they themselves can be tricked.
I remember reading one story. This groupie wanted to get with, rock concert, wanted to get with Van Halen or some band, and so she gave money to the chauffeur.
There you go.
Driving their limo. And suddenly she was in, and she said yeah, and in some cases, there's even cases where the groupies won't give the chauffeur money; they'll give them something else. But yeah, the chauffeur, they might be mad at the chauffeur, but it's one person. It's. Yeah, so yeah, that that's one thing, too. I mean, how many interview requests he's get? One thing I've said I'll put this out there too. If I ever get an interview with Milei, I'm telling him right now, he can bring the dogs.
He must bring the dogs. That's different.
Bring the dogs.
He must bring the dogs.
I'll tell you what. Also, in something like this is one of those times where your dogs might be better than people, because dogs will. Oh, I don't trust this guy. I think he's. A dog might recognize those characteristics more than people will.
I didn't think about it, but yeah, you're
Yeah.
completely correct. They'll tend to sniff danger, and
Yeah.
yeah, I was reading something about like how do you know someone is a sociopath. It's
Who
something
is?
like when you're talking,
Yeah.
when they're listening to you looks fake. It doesn't look natural. Like the face, it's is not inclined forward. Like they're interested, they're just pretending they're interested, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like what I think it happened with this. Like the guy. I don't know what would be the name of the guy. I can't remember the name of the guy that
There
did
was
the whole
Hayden
thing.
Davis, and there was
Hayden Davis. There you go. Like that guy.
Hayden Davis, and there was also the that other guy that he had the photo up with. The Yeah, there was Hayden Davis, and this was the Libra token, which yes, it's yeah. There's Hayden Davis. He also had that picture with some other developer who had the really nerdy looking guy.
The Chinese guy, because I remember there
Yeah,
wasn't a Chinese guy involved there.
yeah, yeah. Well, he had the glasses and everything. I mean, yeah. So I don't know, and I don't know. Some of these people just make a. I don't know anything about these guys, so it's really hard to say what's happening. You know, I don't think it's that hard really to start your own crypto or anything like that. You just kind of do it. You
Yeah,
just need somebody. You just need somebody to promote it. You know.
yeah. That was usually the issue that when since it's just a token, you need someone to promote it so that someone has some interest in buying it and holding it for a little while. There's just no way out of it. That's it.
And sometimes even having a famous name attached to a project doesn't necessarily make it go. Steve Wozniak has actually gotten into his own crypto, and it's not really done much of anything either, even though it's got Steve Wozniak's name on it. You know, the guy, one of the co-founders of Apple.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and another thing too, though, that's a guy who doesn't need to scam people. He's got billions of dollars. Why would he do that? There's nothing to gain for him. He's got all that. I mean, you got all that respect, and people love you for building the Apple computer. Why would you mess with it and possibly get yourself in trouble? One thing is another one of my guys here said, he was actually in the music business, so he'd worked with meme coins, and he said this has destroyed all interest in meme coins.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Or maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. Just they don't.
People don't want to know anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's just out of safety, which is pretty much what the Bitcoin community was concerned with. Just out of safety, just don't get involved in those things. And I usually tell people, I've come out on TV saying, if you're not a sophisticated investor, just don't get into that. That's why we have Cash App, and even Robinhood is a little more sophisticated than Cash App. Put your money there on whatever stock, whatever company you like. If you have some extra money, put it in there and forget about it for a while. That's about it. You don't have to worry about it.
well, the one thing that's changed too, though, is a lot of people said is so much of this trading is done by bots, and that was people were talking about the snipers who go in trying to buy and sell a coin and hoping to make a quick profit. I mean, we've got artificial intelligence now and all this other stuff making these crypto trades, stock trades, currency trades, and whatever. It's really faster than people can do it. I mean, I wonder how much of this is traded by that, and how much can one bot impact the price of the crypto. Does it well enough, it's kind of scary to think of what can happen. Yeah, there's a lot of so much, especially when you've got a small market cap too. There's a lot more volatility. It's just the same way a stock on a small company will go up and down more, say, than the stock for Exxon. Yeah. That's right. You've been to some of those conferences.
Yeah. La Bitcoin.
Yeah, La BitConf.
Everyone's invited, guys. If you guys want to go to Buenos Aires, More than
Yeah.
likely, there's going to be another one in Mexico City, which we're
Yeah.
planning that one, and then another one in Madrid. But the Buenos Aires is usually the main one. That's why I'm really close to the Argentinians.
Yeah.
Most of the activities in Latin America happen first in Argentina, and then from there they start spreading out.
Yeah. That other guy's name is Julian Pay. I guess it's Pay, Peh. The
Okay.
nerdy looking guy,
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I think he's he had a role in that too. Yeah. So there's the Latin American Bitcoin conference, which has been in Buenos Aires, and it's also, I guess, you're branching out, and it's not necessarily a Bitcoin conference either. It's got other things. I kind of wish I'd went to the one last year. Not to mention that happened to be at a really cheap flying time. Plane tickets
Oh.
were really
But
cheap.
where did you go?
I didn't go, but I was thinking about it.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, if you can go one time a year and it's half as much, it certainly makes it more interesting. Yeah, you're all over the place. Yeah, so anyway, what do you? I think we've probably covered all this. People say it's not. The one thing it might hurt, maybe Milei's reputation around the world. But people say it's not going to hurt him in Argentina.
Yeah.
Because as other people said, oh, they've seen worse.
No,
And I
and
don't think
it's so
Milei
far
probably-
away from their daily lives that it makes no difference. The problem is something happens with the dollar, and that's why I wanted Milei to do the dollarization a little more official, like take up on the dollar as their unit of account. But I understand that right now they really don't have. It's very difficult for them to. The point is, in order to go full dollarization, Milei will have to sell nation state assets, sell them for dollars, get those dollars, and then buy away the current pesos. At least the electronic ones, the ones that the banks are holding, so they can have assets that are dollar denominated to back dollar denominated deposits. The problem is that if he starts selling assets, then he's going to have tons of political problems. That's it. There's just no way out of it. So that's why I think he decided to go somewhat like what we call it bimetallism. That the dollar and the peso are exchanging hands. However, at least as long as he stays there, the money supply is going to be somewhat fixed after he already did all the swapping, and that Saifedian couldn't understand, because I understanding Argentina from far away, it's very, very difficult. And that's why I usually tend to say, guys, you can give all the opinions in the world, but you have to ask questions beforehand, because this is not a regular country. Like literally, just like everything is different. Many things that could be possible politically in other countries cannot be done politically. They're not politically possible in Argentina.
True.
So on and so forth. So that's why I usually tend to say, you guys need to get a lot of information before you make comments to Argentina, because more than likely you're gonna get it wrong, because it just doesn't make it's there's no way out of it. Like Argentina is just too different. And I think we discussed this before, but there is a saying among economists that it says there's 4 different types of countries. This way, there you go. It's developed countries, developing countries, developing countries, Japan, and Argentina. Because Japan and Argentina are so different that you have to be very careful when you go in and say, oh, they should do this, should that, or they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Sometimes things are not possible, man. I mean, just straight out. There's certain contexts that is just impossible.
There are a lot of different factors that go into all this. I mean, you know what kind of bothers me more is I've seen these pictures of Milei hanging out with Zuckerberg, and I'm just like, why are you associating with that scumbag? I mean, people may look at me crazy, but I think Zuckerberg is worse than Sam Bankman-Fried easily.
He's worse than what?
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, I don't know who that guy is.
FTX.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I got you. You think he's worse than him?
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
Zuckerberg has created something that's just, I think, has just become destructive to the whole social fabric of society. I mean,
Facebook.
Yeah, we all got hooked on Facebook, and now it's just a parasite on humanity. That all the things that made us like it are gone. And I mean,
everyone's hooked looking for a substitute.
Yeah, there is no substitute. And worst thing is I think it destroyed a lot of the good things about the internet. It sounds like Milei wants to turn Argentina into a tech hub, which I think is an admirable thing to do. It's, and it could certainly do that. You've got some good people down there. Maybe he wants Musk to build a gigafactory. He wants all these other people to come down there and build. And certainly that would work. But sometimes you never know. And you have those people who build things from within when your market opens up. You never know what can. I mean, I just recently heard the news about Skype being, Microsoft is going to discontinue Skype, and I started using Skype in 2007, paying for it, and Skype came out of Estonia. That's probably the most famous thing that ever came out of Estonia. But
I did not know that at all. But
yeah.
Skype was the first thing that people started using for video conferences, right?
People did. Also, well, yeah, you could use calls on it. Also, the cool thing about it, though, too, Aaron, is that you could actually call regular phones with it. I paid $29.50 a year, and I could call anywhere in the U.S. with it, and Canada. And also, they had this massive price list. I could call regular phones in Europe for like 5 cents a minute. It was
pretty cheap.
Yeah, it made super cheap.
I remember that. I did use, I did call a friend in Spain because it was precisely because it was very inexpensive. I just don't remember the year. That's kind of like, what year did I do that? But I do remember using, and I did it on purpose to try to test it to see if it was good and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And my friend back in the days, it was super expensive. She was like, "Are you sure it's expensive?" No. I'm testing it. It's very inexpensive. And I was literally looking at the at the amount of time and the cost, and it was very inexpensive. So yeah, that was one of the great breakthroughs when we were able to like make phone calls, videos, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And right now it's so advanced that it's actually going to go away. But it will be nice to know. I think Facebook's gonna go away, isn't it? Because people are not using it. So I'm not sure that he can survive anything, because I don't think his assets are any more valuable right now or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing there too, though. America became a tech country just by people building their own stuff in here, whether it be Apple or Hewlett Packard or all these other companies that just sprouted up. It's funny how that works. And if you create a good climate for business, you're going to have a lot of innovation. I'm surprised Milei hasn't talked to Peter Thiel or some other people about this, but maybe he has. We just don't know. But there's a lot of people doing a lot of interesting, again, we did want to address, what Seyfedin Amous was talking about. I like Seyfedin. I think he makes a lot of good points, but yeah, I don't think he understands some of the complexities involved. And I don't think you can just, it seemed like he wanted Argentina to default on the debt. I'm like, what?
That they don't, it's because this is the problem that they're trying to, and I think as I was going at him very badly, there's one very nice guy that he is in his circle, Livera, I think that's the name of the guy, the last name. As I was interacting with him on Twitter, Livera, I think that's the name of the guy.
Livera, yeah, he's a Bitcoin guy.
He's a Bitcoin, and no, but what I'm saying is he's on that area. Like usually, the way that we know is whether you're in favor or against fractional reserve banking. So since I'm on the side of the free bankers that we're okay with the fractional reserve banking, he's on the other side. But we get along really well. And as we were interacting, as I was pushing back and say, guys, you can't be defaulting on the debt. There's going to be capital flight. And then someone said something very interesting. It says, and that I came up with. Look, right now we live under a nation state. We don't live in Ancapistan. The one that enforces contracts is the national government. That's how it goes. Like we haven't privatized enforcement yet. So since it's monopolized, if the enforcer of contracts defaults on his contracts, what do you think private investors are going to think of the rest of society? That no contracts are going to be enforced. That's it. So there's capital flight. People in Argentina don't have any resources to invest, and the whole thing just collapses. Why? Because we're not yet in and they were saying, well, there may be some ethical things that can supersede it, and I'm like, no, there's nothing that can supersede destroying the economy of Argentina just because some ethical abstract principle that Seyfedin or any of the
Mhm.
I usually call them
Yeah.
100%ers.
Yes.
Whatever ethical theories you have or principles, sadly so, they usually going to apply really well once we privatize everything, but we haven't privatized anything. Even more so in Argentina, that it's so difficult to even begin to talk about privatization. It's very difficult to talk about
Yes.
privatization in Argentina,
Well, he
and
is
that's
right. Yeah.
including people inside of Milei's close circles.
Markets are very delicate, and the free market and capitalism all depend on trust. They Without trust, you've got nothing. I mean, most of the Latin American countries, I would say, are probably pretty low trust societies. I mean, trust. You I pay you X number of dollars to deliver the widgets at 3 o'clock. You deliver the widgets at 3 o'clock. I, we all make these deals. I trust that when I buy eggs, that they're actually eggs and not some manufactured food. I trust that when I buy avocados from you, that you didn't put cyanide in the avocados. I mean, there's all without trust. I mean, we all just go back to being subsistence farmers and making our own clothes and
Yeah,
having life
that's something
expectancy of
libertarians have
us.
to develop really well,
Yeah,
like the cultural reality that
yeah,
for markets to function, there has to be some very high level of trust. And usually, when there's no trust, the state is the one that intervenes because there's
yeah,
a demand for state, how to say, enforcement
yes,
of contracts when there's no trust. So that's something libertarians have to develop as much as possible. Culture does matter, like, and you have to know all the idiosyncrasies. I usually say the most idiosyncratic country in the world can easily be, how to say, Argentina, and that's the one. And I probably that's why we got the first ANCAP to be president there, is because only well stuff can actually push things away from statism in Argentina. That's just the way it is. I mean,
yeah. Well, I think you also build trust in small communities and networks doing things. It's a you have your network maybe of 500, your little neighborhood of 500 people where everybody kind of knows everybody. I talk a lot about my mother working the polls and issues like voter ID. And I said, well, back when my mother worked the polls, all the ladies working the polls knew who everybody was. So that's why they never asked for ID. And I think sometimes, large, there tends to be more trust in the smaller towns than there is in the big towns. Which is unfortunate, but it's a, you know, so I don't know how, and I don't really know how you create a high trust society out of a low trust society. I guess you just
it's
have
a cultural thing. Things have to work for people to begin to trust again, and then that new trust, when things start working, has to be developed even more. And usually, that's very difficult because it's kind of like path dependency. The
yeah,
the past does create expectations about the future, and our current behavior, it's about the expectation about the future. So it's very difficult to switch away, but it can happen. I remember like small little phenomena for a couple of years. For example, Mexico City, let's say before 2012, if I remember correctly. Yeah, before 2012, I think. Yeah.
yes,
um Mexico City was a very low trust area simply because there was so much crime. And the former mayor of Mexico City, he was actually, everyone like from left and right, he's usually considered lefty. Oh, I forgot his name. Last name completely went away. Okay, but
mayor of
Ebrard,
Mexico
that's it.
City. Yeah,
Makes it back, yeah, back Ebrard, that's the name of the guy. From 20 before 2012, like let's say by 2011, a little bit before, he had actually dealt with a lot of crime, and the city was looking great. Everyone from left to right liked him and all that kind of stuff. So, and trust begins to rise because there's less crime. We used to make the jokes in Mexico City, like my family from over there, something like, if you were not, if someone didn't rob you in 2 weeks, at the end of those 2 weeks, you didn't know what to do with the extra money that you usually don't have, because usually they take away money from you. You think about it, like those jokes were very common, which it was very common getting, how to say, for people to rob you right in the middle of the street. That gets fixed, and then people little by little begins to trust others, and that creates very good how to say expectations about the future. I don't
yeah,
know what the situation is right now, but the first thing that has to change, it has to do with security. That's the key. People want to feel safe. They don't care if it's a libertarian, a right winger, a left winger, as long as their kids are safe, as long as they can go out with their family, like just go to the movies on the weekend, somewhat at night, they're immediately going to start trusting society and social structures and how to say contracts and expectations and promises. But that has to be solved little by little. And at least Milei did kind of catch up on that he needed to start with security. And one of the first things that he did was he got a couple of kidnappers in jail as soon as he came in. And one of the key issues why people like
Yeah.
him so much in Argentina, it's I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this, which is called the protest and manifestations that they do. They call them piquetes, and one is what they call it, like instead of just calling manifestations or like a protest, it's because usually what they do is they cut the streets, whatever they're gonna do them, the protest every single week, almost without exception. They don't let cars pass by, and so everything becomes a mess during the moment where they during that picket or that manifestation, the entire city becomes a mess. How can you build trust in a situation like that? So he
Yeah.
focused first in ending them completely, and now there's no piquetes. Like you can go and protest whatever you want, but you cannot close the street so that people can pass without much of a
Yeah.
problem. That's more than enough for people to say, I don't care about Guarderías or Milei. He's doing what he's supposed to do, which is giving us some level of trust so that we can trust each other and we can actually get to places. Imagine not being able to plan to be on time at work because you know
Yes.
that they're going to cut the streets. Just imagine what kind of crazy situation you have to go through. Nobody cares about the ideology or the, how to say, abstract principles.
Yeah.
They just want to make it to work.
Yeah, I've had two experiences in my life. I so hate traffic blockers like this. Yeah, and one time I ended up being late for work. That was why. It's like I don't know why. I mean, there's so many, and I've been to plenty of protests. I mean, I've protested outside the Austin Police Department. It's just on the sidewalk. It's not, and sometimes just being on the sidewalk can make a difference. I mean, I remember one time, we two groups. I was in the group that wanted to protest in front of the state capitol. Another group just happened to show up already. So it's like, well, I guess we out of luck because they got there first. But there's that, and of course, there's that beautiful big Plaza de Mayo that's right in front of the Casa Rosada. You can go out there and protest to your heart's desire. It's a nice big square, probably the size of a football field. I mean, it's a huge open, probably the size of a couple football fields. Huge space where you can just go out there and protest to your heart's desire.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, and not block traffic. There'll be people walking around not wanting to protest, but yeah, you just go out there right in front of the president's house. So yeah, I think getting it and making sure the contracts are enforced too. Making sure people have to deliver on, but that's up to the courts too. Yeah,
On their promises and all that.
yeah,
Just make it friendly for the courts to, how to say, to make their judgments, and then the one that is going to enforce it directly indirectly is going to be the executive, because it's
yes,
the police officer and so on and so forth, that they depend directly and indirectly from the executive. So
yeah,
yes, there's a lot of work to be done, and the first one is to develop trust, which is what you had in mind.
yeah, and and as you have trust, people can make long-term plans. They can make more investments. You can. The interesting part, too, about the security crackdown is a lot of this is, of course, due to the impact of Patricia Bullrich, and of course, she's basically, sending out the police to arrest people who would have been her 50 years ago.
Who wouldn't be what?
Bullrich would have been, I mean, 50 years ago, she probably would have been one of the traffic blockers, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I don't know about that. Do you have some info about that? When she was young?
Bullrich was part of Montoneros.
I don't know that much about her history. I know she was always like wasn't she in the military and all that kind of stuff?
I don't
I
think
didn't know
she's
she
really
was.
there, but yes, it's kind of, I joke about it. Yes, it's like the hacker who becomes a security consultant.
Oh, that's so interesting. I did not know that
I
detail about
used to
her.
I used to be a terrorist. Now I arrest them.
Well, yeah, because I'm the know-how person, so yes, I know
and,
what I'm
and
doing.
and it works because just like the hacker, the security, the hacker who becomes, or we should say, the black hat hacker who becomes the white hat hacker. He still understands how the hackers think, understanding how the criminals think, and they end up being the most effective because they understand those things.
Yeah,
They know how to get them at their next move. Yeah, Bullrich has had a very colorful career.
that's so
From what
interesting.
I'm
I didn't
hearing,
know.
too, though, this could be the result of the. There's definitely I guess it's more of a drifting apart between Milei and Villarruel. Uh,
That one was crazy.
yeah,
Like I could not believe that she did what she did. Long story short, for the audience, the vice president badmouthed Milei in Spain, and the good thing is that people,
yeah.
right wingers in Spain, they're very faithful to Milei, and they nearly came to say, "Hey, she's bad mouthing you," and so she cannot be kicked out,
Yeah.
but she's just not part of she's not part of actively of
When
meetings and all that. So there's just a respectful relationship, but she has no power inside of the administration anymore.
yeah,
That's it.
when was this one in Spain?
I don't remember the dates, but I know for sure that it was a couple of months after they started. I'm gonna guess, and this is just
When
my
he
guess. I think it
spoke
was
in
January.
Spain? Yeah,
What?
was it when he spoke in Spain?
No, I think it was after he spoke in Spain. She
Yeah,
went over there, and then she was talking to some of the business people that are right wingers around there and whatever,
yeah.
and even some of the right wingers that supported Milei, which would be Abascal. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Spain
Santiago
political scene.
Abascal,
Abascal
the guy
Box, it
from
will be
Fox.
like the right wing. Yeah,
Yeah,
Abascal.
yeah.
Abascal. And so like as soon as he saw that she was bad mouthing you about bad mouthing him, Milei, Abascal immediately went to Milei and said, "Hey, look, be careful with this. Your vice president is bad." And we were in complete shock because we honestly thought, I was like, it. You just have to wait 8 years or
Yeah,
so, and you're gonna be the next president of a booming economy, and you're gonna enjoy all the fruits of what is happening right now. Why rush any of this? It made absolutely no sense whatsoever
yeah.
that she would try to do that. Like it's just
Okay.
crazy.
So there was one big incident that kind of blew this up. I guess I thought it was more like so it wasn't necessarily a dripping, like, as I said, drifting apart. It was more like a split, just ripping the paper in half.
Split. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't like little by little as far as I know. It was a total split.
Well, I've heard that she might have wanted to be doing what Bullrich is doing, and that's why she might not be happy.
That's such a good question. I think that's
Yeah,
exactly what someone told me, that for sure they didn't Milei didn't want her to be the one in charge of the fence.
yeah,
And so he put her as vice president because at least in paper it looks good that she's the second in command, but definitely she did not want her to be in charge of the
yeah,
fence. And as far as I remember, Bullrich is actually, how to say, more trustworthy overall, because she has been very faithful to Milei. She keeps her word really well, no matter how much they trash each other before the actual election.
oh yeah,
When they know how to make a deal, they make a deal, and she's trustworthy. Like again, right? Like the trustworthiness of that you can count on if you wish, and she's pretty good at that, which I was very impressed.
I think, maybe Bullrich also realizes she's kind of reaching the end of her political career, and she wants to at least go out and have something positive that she can say before it all ends. I mean, although I think she's also kind of that woman who just attaches herself to the top male, uh, and just kind of follows him because he knows what he's doing. You know, uh, she seems like she's she's probably pretty damn smart.
Yeah.
Thing about Vidrell is she always looks so classy. I mean, she's always presents real good. She reminds me a lot of Princess Kate. Just yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, she was pretty good.
yeah,
Yeah, no, and that's why I was so surprised, because it was
yeah,
like, there's no reason why you would do that. Like literally, like it's just absolutely no reason. I don't know if someone behind her just kind of got her ear and then convinced her that she should be the president right away or something like that. But it was a complete mistake. Like all she had to do was to be patient, and I know she's like in her 40s, so there was absolutely no reason why she would ever there to, how to say, there was no reason why she needed to rush, because she had her entire life to be in
yeah,
charge of Argentina, and actually in the appropriate way, because let's say she's more into like right-wing culture issues.
yeah,
Milei was going to come and fix all the economy for 8 years, and then later, when you have a very wealthy economy, you can just worry about all the cultural stuff and whatever, and then move on with your life. So it was just absolutely, like, it was the perfect setting for Villarruel to have an amazing, how
Yeah,
to say, 8 years of
yeah,
presidency
maybe so.
after
Yeah.
Milei will leave.
I don't know. I don't know Victorel, but maybe she just had an epiphany too, and she just wants to not be a boss babe anymore and maybe go be a housewife. Maybe that's part of it. I don't, it's hard to
After
say.
this one, after this, she's like, yeah, I messed up or whatever. That's a good one. What is she gonna do after? That will be that
Yeah,
that will
you
be
know,
actually very interesting.
I mean, she certainly probably got plenty of there are probably plenty of guys out there that say, "Yeah, I'll, sure, yeah, yeah," because she still looks amazing. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, Villarruel, she was born in 75,
yeah.
which means she is what, 40? Yeah, 49. Yeah, she had, imagine by the time before she would turn 60, she could have
49,
been, yeah, she could
yeah,
easily have how to say,
kids,
yeah,
yeah,
there you go. From say from 55 to 65 or so, she could easily have been the president
yeah.
of Argentina without any problem.
I don't think Bullrich has any kids either, does she? She's
That's a good
still.
question. I don't know about that.
I should look that up. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, Bullrich said was born in '56. I mean, that's like I said. I think she realized this might be one of her last hurrahs, and she just wants to make sure she at least has some positive impact on the country since certainly worn a lot of she's certainly worn a lot of different uniform. She's been on a lot of
Uniform.
different teams. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, no, no. But I mean, these people are usually, and I kind of think it's somewhat okay because it
Yeah.
keeps, how to say, there's some type of continuity. She has been on politics since long ago, and so whether you like it or not, she will always be an asset close to you because she has a lot of know-how that she
Oh
can
yeah.
apply, and she has been doing good
I mean, yeah, Bullrich was actually out of the country from '77 to '82.
from 77 to 82.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was a pretty turbulent time. It's a you know Schiaretti was out of the country. The other guy running for president.
Who?
Juan Schiaretti, the governor of Cordoba, I believe,
Oh,
he
okay,
was out
okay.
of the country for a while too. Yeah, he was the old guy that because I remember during the debates he was one guy that I thought Milei could work with because Bullrich and Milei just they went at each other so in those debates they were. I mean, yeah, it was a lot meaner than any exchanges between Milei and Massa. That's why it was so
Yeah, because of
wild. Yeah,
their personalities clash.
yeah.
I mean, at least in debating, but that's pretty cool that they can work together in private, that's all you need. That's really maybe in debate they clash, but in private both of them are smart enough to know how to work it out.
It's just like a role playing game almost. It's so wild. I've never
In general,
Aaron,
you have to. There's no way out of it.
Aaron. The other thing too is in my political life, I've noticed that when somebody because I don't know if you saw that. I actually made that apology tweet. I'm sorry for all the things I said about Patricia Bullrich on this Twitter on my show. It's like, yeah,
Back in the days,
yeah.
not
I said
anymore.
that I think in November after the alliance came, and it's also easier to go from really thinking somebody is a villain to thinking they're fairly decent. To go the other way is just it's very emotional to think that somebody's a hero and then this person is not a hero at all.
Oh, like, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
no, for me, I had a hard time because for me it was like the
yeah,
position where Villarruel was. It was just so
yeah,
perfect. I was like, she has the PR. She knows how to work the social media really well because
yeah.
that's what you need these days. For me, it was just completely like, why would she do something like this? It's just crazy.
Let it be noted that I don't think V. Ruel is a villain. I really don't have an opinion of her at all, but I've had that happen to some other people closer to me that I've known that I thought were really great, and now I don't think they're so great here
Oh,
in the USA. But anyway, uh, that's what do you think about the elections coming up? We've got some good people out there who are running again, and hopefully there'll be some more people in there, and Milei can get a friendlier
so
chamber.
so far I can see he's gonna get a, how to say, a large quantity of his people elected, and that's really gonna make a big difference because now he has been able to do a lot, surprisingly, despite the fact
Yeah,
that he has almost nobody in the Senate and in the legislature. But however, he still has been able to pass a lot of laws, and the good thing that the president has a lot of power to pass certain direct I forget how you would call it, commands, I guess if you want to say it
Yeah,
that way.
executive orders. Yeah.
Direct executive orders that he has been able to do some here and there, and then he has been smart enough so that because it could be that the legislature actually stops your executive order, but he has enough
Yes.
support. He has found a way to get enough support so that the legislature doesn't stop most of his executive orders, and it has worked. We're doing actually good.
Yes. Yeah, and the Chamber of Deputies has 257. There are 40 with La Libertad Avanza. It's in the Senate has 72 seats, and there's 7 for La Libertad Avanza. So if you can get it, I mean that's not nothing, but it's definitely something we need to get more of. Hopefully, who are some of these really good people in the Senate and in the Chamber of Deputies? Anybody really
I
stand out for you?
No, that I know of, no, because
Yeah.
I have not kept track of the specific names. The only one that I know for sure is this girl last name, and I think she's from from the House of Commons or whatever, their version of
The Chamber of Deputies, yeah.
exactly Chamber Deputies. Limon, I thought she
Lilia
was fantastic.
Limon, yeah.
Yes, she was fantastic because she was the one. She doesn't know anything about politics or economics or whatever, but she has such a good, how to say, intuitions, and she was the first one to say, "No, no, no, be careful with Villarreal. She's the problem." And Milei, I know he listened to her because nobody got after her, which means Milei was like, "Okay, and I
Yeah.
accept you going through this." And at the end of the day, she was right. Now, those are the people that I
Yeah.
usually follow because they're usually the ones that make things happen. You know what I mean? And so that those are the people that I've been following. In the Senate in general, I have not kept track of any other names for right now. And anyway, they're gonna switch. I don't know exactly if they're allowed to and that's something I don't know. If there's some type of re-election, so you can have the ones that you already have right now stay there, and then new people coming along.
Okay.
Hopefully that's exactly what happens, but I'm not completely sure.
Yeah, that Lilia Limone is the one.
Lilia Limone,
She's
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. I know she speaks English too. So Lilia, if you're watching, I'd love to have you here. It's yeah. There's a few other things that I've noticed. Also, the one I often pay attention to is uh, one of my favorites, of course, is Maria Amelia Orozco from Salta. She always posts a lot of cool videos on YouTube. So yeah, there's got some. Heck, any of them speak English. I'd be happy to have them here. I've met
Mhm.
I've met
Yep.
Alberto Benegas Lynch, and Espert is also in the Jose Luis Espert is also in the
Oh, there
chamber.
you go.
That yeah, there's lots of good people. I hopefully will follow some of them on Twitter, and it's a, yeah, and we got a growing party hopefully, and it's be interesting to see what we can do after this Senate. Yeah, it was very much modeled after the U.S. Constitution, so that's why
That's a
they have a
good
Senate in that.
that,
Although
that, that's a good point.
yeah, that's an interesting. I often find it interesting they use that word deputy to refer to uh, people in the Congress. We just call them representatives here.
Yeah, actually, I prefer like in Spanish is diputados. I always get confused in the United States when you guys say representatives because I'm like, isn't the senators also representatives? Like it got me totally confused. Or it was at some point I remember like in the United States, Congress was always assumed to be the House of Representatives,
Yeah,
and then sometimes people would say Congress and the Senate, and I was like, no, that's the House of Representatives. In Spanish,
yeah,
it's so easy because it's the House of Diputados and the House of Senadores, so it's easy. You always
yeah.
have that distinction, and that's Congress in
And
general.
and of course, what's interesting, also, is that in English, in America, a deputy is somebody who's under the sheriff.
Yes,
You
that
know,
I
the
had to
sheriff
learn
is
those things
the
when I
sheriff
came
is
when I
the
came to.
elected police officer, and then he has deputies. In fact, a sheriff generally can say anybody, "Hey, you're a deputy," just like that, and that's one thing, a power that a sheriff usually has. And of course, that's one thing. A lot of I'm still realizing America is a much more decentralized country than a lot of these places. I mean,
Most Americans don't understand that. I
yeah,
noticed that they just take it for granted and they just move on with their lives. Actually, my concern with Trump is that I think it's going to lead to a lot of centralization, either because of him or as a consequence of him in the following how to say in the following years. And I really wish we can pull it back. because I think one of the successes of the US is precisely the fact that it's naturally very decentralized. And sometimes it's just because it's so big, the central government couldn't really, how to say, impose too much on everyone.
Yes.
So everyone just got used to decentralization. No matter how much centralization you could see during the Great Depression because of FDR or even Wilson,
Yes.
some decades before, it's still very decentralized relative to other countries.
Oh yes.
Even the states, right? They're like, even the states are not like Texas for sure is not. California, I don't know how much the state legislature gets involved in local issues. But still, since they're so big, it's usually just for most people, you're like, I just let it be local, and that's it.
There's long been a tradition of county sheriffs basically. I mean, if at least in America, if the feds say to the county sheriff, you got to arrest these people, the county sheriff can often just say no, and
Yeah,
I
that's
don't.
unheard of.
Or if the feds even said, I want you to prosecute all these marijuana users, and the sheriff will say no.
Nope.
Yeah, that's. I think that's one. Aaron, I think that's one thing that's been very interesting about the whole history of Spanish law, and so many of these countries are influenced by Spanish laws. It's much more top down and hierarchical, with a king who's all powerful. And I mean, that's if you look at just how South America developed versus how North America developed.
For Hayek,
Yeah.
he was very pleased with common law, British
Yeah.
common law, precisely because it was naturally decentralized. It was closer to a spontaneous order than, how to say, than a centralized legislature, like
Yeah. I
positive
mean,
legal positivism, I think they call it.
yeah. I don't know how it works in Canada, but I suppose Canada, what a Canadian sheriff, how much power a Canadian sheriff has,
That's such a good question. Everyone's so nice that
but
I'm not even sure if people say no to anything.
but how do you think that happened? That's Spain has always been so from the all powerful king going down. Is it maybe because it goes back to the legacy of the Pope, being the ruler of the church, or
That's such a good point. You might actually be right that that's what, and that affects all of Latin America, not just
yeah,
uh, Argentina itself. It's just that the problem with Argentina. I was telling someone there was a critique of Milei of, oh, he hasn't decentralized anything, and it's like, guys, the problem is that the provinces don't want this. This is something Americans have never heard of. This is you decentralize, but then the provinces say, oh yeah, yeah, we make the decisions. So you central government go tax everyone so that we get more resources. So it truly is just centralization. It's just that there's a lot of people telling the central government what to do, not the central government itself. But it makes no difference because it's just as centralized as if it was the federal government itself. So that's something that for Americans is almost unheard of. Imagine a state saying, "Oh yeah, great, give us decentralization. We make decisions. Okay, now we're in charge of the central government. Let's centralize everything just for whatever we feel like it." And that's something that Americans are not ready. That's why trying to interpret what happens in Argentina, and I was telling lefties and right wingers, guys, I'm sorry, but this is just completely outside of your what would be like pay grade of your knowledge, because it's just so idiosyncratic, like just crazy. And people that go to Argentina tell you, so man, this is like just the fact that we notice that even in their Spanish lingo, on top of the fact that is the closest you're gonna get to Italian without being Italian. For
yes,
example, a lot of details like they introduce a lot of soccer lingo on their daily lives that even in other countries, like for example in my case, I tend to make jokes related, like I don't know, I see my friends or my wife or whatever, they're like discussing, they're doing something, and I start narrating what they're doing as if I was a soccer, how to say,
yeah,
a soccer narrator, right? But that's just me because I'm silly and all that kind of stuff. But people don't on a daily basis speak with how to say, with soccer lingo. These guys do it all the time. So a lot of people get when they're learning Spanish and they try to make sense of it. It's like, okay, they're just using how to say lingo from soccer. Imagine try and the monetary policy. The issue that almost everyone in Argentina knows about monetary policy. That's unheard of. You can actually talk to people about inflation and monetary policy on a daily basis because it happens to be so important. Okay, imagine that situation. Try to explain that to an American. It's just near impossible.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine. But people know about things like monetary policy. That's certainly good to know. I mean, it's
yeah, regular people had to learn. I mean, it was just a necessary thing. Like, why are prices
yeah.
rising? So there's a debate on a daily basis. What's going on with the money supply? Literally, there's no way out of it.
Interesting thing about the sheriff is the sheriff actually apparently got started in Iceland. The whole concept of the sheriff. It's and then the English copied that as was a. I don't even know if there's a Spanish word for it, but it's something that came after, obviously came after the Roman Empire. So it would have never would have gotten to the Roman influenced states. But yes, yeah, it is interesting about the language. Yeah, Spanish is probably closest to Italian than anything else. I guess it's
Portuguese is closer to Portuguese, and it's very and Argentine Spanish. It's oddly enough, regular Spanish is closer to Portuguese. Argentine Spanish is closer to Italian, and then to Portuguese because of the heavy influence from Italian immigrants.
yeah. There's so many Italian immigrants. Yeah, I'd be curious to look in to see how and why did all these different accents develop? It's really wild. It seems like there's more accent diversity among the Spanish speakers than among the English speakers.
My guess is because we're so spread out, or well, there's many countries, so we get very how to say closely separate. And that
Close.
one will be separated because if you think about all the Latin American countries plus Portugal and Spain, if
Yeah,
you compare that to let's say the English-speaking world where there's official, what will be the big countries? Will be Australia, New
New
Zealand, which is
Zealand,
the Australian,
Britain,
and yeah, all of Britain and the United
Canada.
States and Canada, right? Like this,
Yeah,
there seems to be very few uh, countries that speak English in as their own identity. Like maybe the population is about the same. I'm not completely sure,
yeah,
but
and
uh, but it does develop differently.
and don't call the Kiwis Aussies; they will not be happy with that. But anyway, uh, but Aaron,
Sorry, guys.
I
I
imagine
love
though
your
you
accent.
probably even got a certain degree of accent diversity just within Mexico itself.
I've heard South Americans say that
Yeah,
Mexico is the most diverse accent Latin American country. Like there's our Spanish, like the way I speak, which will be northeast Mexico, northeast Mexico. It's very noticeable when I go when I go to Mexico City or even like South Mexico. People immediately know like, oh, you're not from here. You're from northern Mexico. So people do tell you that that Mexico is super. And one of these is that is super vast relative to other
yeah,
countries. It's just so vast that the population is, I think, after Brazil, it's the biggest one. So Spanish speaking, it's probably the biggest Spanish speaking country in the world, right? Yeah, I think it is. Like
yeah.
population
Mexico is
was,
by population. Yeah, but I mean Brazil
but
they speak Portuguese, but also largest Spanish speaking population, and of course the and very large geographically. People spread all over the place, all those mountains. Yeah, yeah. One thing I've been asking, where do how is as far as accents are concerned, where do they where are a lot of the Spanish speaking movies and TV shows made?
where do they what?
Well, like Spanish speaking movies, Spanish speaking TV. I know a lot of it. I know there's a lot of it in Miami, but where else?
Oh, okay. Historically, and even today, still, Mexico had a lot of influence because in the 50s, for sure,
Yeah,
it was probably the only place, Spanish speaking, where there were movies. So usually in South America, for sure, happened that when you go to the movies, all the movies were Mexican movies, like our famous actors of the 50s and even
yeah,
60s maybe, um, Pedro Infante, Negrete, like they're very well known in South America. The one that is extreme, that is
yeah.
not just the movies, but it's like TV. There's a show that is very important for Mexicans in general, which is Chespirito. It's the main character is something called El Chavo del Ocho, which is very famous because he was like a comedic, how to say, series, I guess you could actually call, or show. He was a comedian and he would have a bunch of different stories and whatever. So he's very important in Mexico, but he's even more important in South America, all of South America, not just Argentina, Uruguay, Peru, and whatever. Like it's so important for their culture. Like the Mexican show Chespirito, or in this case El Chavo del Ocho, is so important that throughout generations, the way
Chesperito.
that what
Chesperito, you said?
Chespirito or Chavo del Ocho is easier to look.
Chesperito. Oh, Mexican
Yeah,
sketch comedy.
there you go.
Yeah.
If you look for El Chavo del Ocho, I don't know if you can. El Chavo del and then 8. I don't know
Well,
if
that was
you're.
one guy told me. I had a Bolivian on here, and he told me, he said, a lot of the comedians are from Argentina. He said for that reason he thought Milei could only happen in Argentina because of how the cultural is there.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Mexico City, I suppose, is where the hub is, but also, the most famous media personality I know in the Spanish speaking world, though he's not active anymore, though, of course, was Don Francisco.
That he's from Chile.
Yeah, he's from Chile, but his show was all over the place.
Yes, almost everyone knew him very well.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably the most famous person in.
And since the Chilean accent is very difficult to grasp, I know that he had to train his accent so that it could be understandable to pretty much everyone. Because Chile, yeah. I suppose among the Spanish-speaking world, I think the Chilean accent is the one that is a little more difficult to follow.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Was that filmed in Chile or was it filmed somewhere else?
No, it wasn't. As far as I remember, okay, I think it started in Chile, then they brought it to Miami or whatever, and I think it was from the last 90% of the show ended up being filmed in the United States. But I don't even remember if it was Telemundo or Univision. That's I'm completely lost on that one. But it's one of the Spanish-speaking networks, if you wish.
Yeah, because I years ago I remember being at a friend's house and he had his Ecuadorian girlfriend. It was Saturday night and they were watching it. It's called Sábado Gigante, or a Giant Saturday.
There you go.
Or Gigante or Gigante, yeah, but Giant Saturday, yeah.
The name's right. When you try it and you're like, what are they talking about?
And it was funny too. It's kind of part game show, part talk show, part ads. I mean, but he was huge.
Yeah, that is correct. He was huge.
I mean, probably the most famous. Probably at the time, but he retired about 10 years ago, or
I don't remember that. In the U.S., I know for sure he was the most famous Spanish speaker we had in the United States. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure in the world, but yeah, he could be. Because in the worldwide, it will be more like the important singers, like I don't know, Ricky Martin, and a bunch of the other guys. Maybe they were a little more famous than him, but in the U.S., definitely he was the most famous.
Yeah, it's
Shakira,
yeah. It makes me wonder too. I know we're getting way off the topic of Milei, but we're at the end of the month will be the 30th anniversary of the murder in Corpus Christi.
Of Selena.
Yeah.
No, sir, don't remind me those things, sir. Yeah, that's
sorry about that. Yeah,
she's core of my culture. Like, it's not just generalistic, like, oh, the Hispanic. No, that's actually my culture. South Texas, northern Mexico, like literally that. So, all of my students, like, which they were born. I have some students. I was telling someone like they were born in 2009, sir. They're sophomores in high school and they're allowed to take college classes because they're really smart.
Yes.
So I actually have students that weren't even born when the financial crisis started in 2007. So so it was pretty wild. And I know the seniors probably from 2007, which still, that means they have no memory of what happened in that time. I have to let them know what happened and so on and so forth.
I'm sorry. I knew that was emotional though, because I did not know until I got to Texas how much people loved her down here.
Okay, no, no, it's because she was big.
Oh yeah, and Kate, I remember going out I went out. I was in a restaurant in San Antonio, and I saw this little collection of photos up on the wall, and it's Selena y los Dinos,
Mm-hmm.
And they just.
Where did you go in Texas?
That was in San Antonio.
Oh, yeah, she's big over there. Yeah. From San Antonio, Corpus Christi, I would even include Houston if I remember correctly. Maybe from Austin up, not, but from Houston down, yes, definitely.
It's such a story of what might have been.
With her, yeah, she was good.
Yeah, I think she probably would have been humongous in English too. She had a.
That's such a good question, right? well, after Ricky Martin opened up
Yeah.
the English, the American market
Oh yeah.
For Spanish speaking singers, I think she would have just, how to say,
Well,
exploded big time.
well, she was before Ricky Martin, but really the woman who opened it up was Gloria Estefan.
I'm gonna say yes, but I did not notice like how big, like after Ricky Martin. I did notice that
Yeah.
Americans were talking more about Spanish speaking singers after Ricky Martin than
But
compared to like Gloria Stefan was always like the token Spanish speaker, if you ask me. And after Ricky Martin, it was just like just a total explosion.
well, yeah, but Gloria Estefan was in Florida, and she was more appealed to the Cubanos than the
Yes,
Mexicanos. So yeah,
that's what I'm guessing. And Ricky Martin had this, and a lot of non-Mexican Spanish speakers, they pass by the Mexican, how to say, business show
yeah,
market, and they become big there. And then from there they jump to the United States, and that's what he did. He's from Puerto Rico, if I'm right,
yeah.
but
He's from Puerto Rico.
he first went to Mexico, not United States, and he became famous in Mexico. And when you become famous in Mexico, you become famous pretty much all Latin America because that's where show business is.
Yeah,
That's where because the population is so big and you're so close to the United States. There's so many resources compared to everywhere else. And then from there, he jumped to the United States and he just hit it big. And I think after him is when you can actually see regular Americans discussing
yeah.
Spanish speaking singers. That's where I saw the big like the big jump.
Well, he was also part of Menudo for a long time.
There you
You
go.
know that boy band that had I think what they had a mandatory retirement age at 15 or something like that, so they kept recycling.
That's so true. I don't remember what was the limit, but yeah, it was actually kind of young. I'm guessing, and this is just me. I'm guessing they would be 19 because they wanted to be like teens.
Yeah, Menudo was the Puerto Rican boy band that they wanted to basically was to keep girls of a certain age interested, so they didn't want the boys to get too old. But
Yes, I
these
would have done the same
these
thing.
9 and 10-year-old girls would say, "Oh, Menudo," that kind of age bracket. Yeah, so it's certainly interesting watching how. Yeah, so is it still Mexico City or in Miami, or do you think? I mean, do they have some movie making in Buenos Aires? Do they have some movie making in I don't know Colombia?
As far as I know, the problem with Buenos Aires and in general is that since the state has it completely had it, thanks to Milei not anymore, completely control, there really wasn't like all these great
Yeah,
movies and shows or whatever coming from. And for me, it was pretty bad because I know that Argentinians have a lot of talent in general.
yeah,
That you could have actually figured out that their movies were going to be good, but the problem is that there was a monopoly there. Pretty much all the artists have to kiss the how to say, the ring of whomever is in power and things like that, and that slows down everything completely. So that's why, if you ask me, that's one of the odd things about Mexico, that in general I never value it all that much, but I think Mexico in general is a little more decentralized just because people in general don't care about politics, so they don't request the central government to do like all these gigantic projects or so on and so forth. In Argentina, that was a big problem. Is that, as I told you, even the provinces want the central government to do all this nonsense. How to say? Take care of pretty much
yes,
absolutely everything. And in Mexico City, in Mexico was never like that. There was still centralization because most of the things, uh, pretty much all culture and finance was centralized in Mexico City completely. It's not even like in the United States that you have at least some split between LA and New York. Uh, and no, in Mexico it was everything there. However, politically speaking, you can actually see how localities don't expect the central government to do all this, wild, how to say, wild nonsense, so on and so forth. And I think
yeah,
that has kept Mexican political culture, as much as I hate a lot of details of it, it has kept it somewhat healthy because localities don't expect the central government to do like all this, how to say, all great things. Actually, usually people get mad when the federal government intervenes because usually they have noticed that it causes a lot of problems. The one that is big in northern Mexico was that they intervene on some stuff about water. I think the Mexican northern states have some agreements with us with border American states about water. Like
yes,
sometimes they give each other water back and forth and whatever. The central
yeah,
government came in and it just made a mess. So people are not happy, all that happy about it. But it's just a historical thing that, in general, localities don't expect the central government to do a lot, which is
yeah.
good if you ask me.
The
No,
state of
in the north even
Arizona,
more.
the state of Arizona is part of some kind of kind of group where they have agreements with one of the Mexican states. You know, I got to ask you. I know we went way off at the topic of Milei, but
That's fine.
uh, what do you got to say about this movie called Amelia Perez?
I haven't watched it because I think it's ridiculous, and everyone thinks it's ridiculous. And as far as they tell me, the singer, the how to say, the actors,
Yeah,
they were like, they really acted horribly with when people started complaining about the way they depicted Mexico, and it wasn't, as far as people told me, is noticeable that the makers have absolutely no knowledge of how Mexico actually works. And then Selena Gomez, or what's the name of the lady that,
Selena Gomez is in it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
and it says
those
this is
names are
crazy.
Selena Quintanilla Perez. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, the problem with her is that she doesn't speak Spanish. That's it, and she made a mess. And one Mexican singer, no, sorry, actor, comedian, um, Eugenio Derbez, he got into a lot of trouble because he said ahead of time the problem with this, before it was aired, like officially
yes,
aired. He said the problem with Selena Gomez doesn't speak any Spanish, and so she would look ridiculous. And he was saying that he was in the filming, and he
yeah,
was looking at each other like, what the heck is going on? She doesn't speak Spanish. Why are they making her go through this? Like, usually if you don't speak Spanish, you have to let them know, hey guys, don't do this, don't make me do this.
yeah,
I'm not gonna look good. Nobody said anything. So he said it ahead of time. People hated on him for saying that, but when it came out, everyone said, I'm sorry, Eugenio Derbez. This is, I thought, dude, you were absolutely right. And some people that don't like him, they were saying, oh, I really hate Selena Gomez because she made me be agree with Eugenio Derbez. But Eugenio Derbez, the Mexican comedian, he was just saying, like, guys, this is crazy. Like, it makes no sense to have someone that doesn't speak Spanish. Forget about the accent, because she obviously doesn't have
yeah,
a Mexican accent. No, nothing is understandable of what she's saying when she speaks Spanish in the movie. So it, if I understand correctly, it sounded like this is kind of like the last, one of the last uh, how would you call it? One of the last breathing breath that the woke culture has, because
yes,
this is complete, like, literally, it's the most, as far as I know, the most arrogant woke movie that you can ever imagine, where they honestly don't care about the reality of Mexico. They don't care about the authenticity of even of the language. They were always super picky about that, but then because someone there, it's of an I don't know, it's seen as a how to say, some of the actors are, I don't know what, then it's kind of like, they justify, like, yeah, you can be racist one way but not the other, or something like that,
yeah,
if you follow in the proper hierarchy. And I think that's what happened, and a lot of people in Mexico are not happy about that. So I hope that these kind of consequences, they're so visible that it will make most people think, okay, I think we need to get out of this cultural stuff, how to say, all the woke stuff, where everyone is a victim. Because at the end of the day, then nobody's a victim, because everyone's just fighting for the hierarchy of who's going to be more victimized than the next. And people are just tired of that, because you cannot have peace in a context where everyone is trying to be a victim. And in order to be a victim, you have to go look for the errors or any little mistake of other people, and nobody wants to live in that world. I mean,
yeah.
really, that's.
You know, what are some, Aaron, what are some movies that you think get it right?
Oh, I mean, the
Either Made in America or Made in Mexico that really portrays
of how
things
Mexico
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
My For example, and a lot of people probably don't like it that I say, but Denzel Washington's movie. That's a very common, like, what everything that happens there is very common. Like, literally, like,
Denzel
yeah.
Washington. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised Denzel
What is it?
Washington was in a movie about Mexico, but oh well.
Don't you remember? It's something like Men on Fire or something like that.
I'll look up and see what I can find.
Men on Fire, I think that's the name of it.
I like Denzel Washington. I always think he's a very good actor. But yeah,
Men on Fire, yeah, yeah. There you go, Men on Fire. You haven't watched that one?
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen a whole lot of movies recently. I admit my time
I
with
would actually recommend that. That gets it better of the reality of Mexico. And now, to be fair, in 2004, Mexico City was more violent
yeah,
than now. Remember that I told you that before 2012 they cleaned up a lot of stuff.
yeah,
So it's not going to be as bad, but it might let you know how things are right now in other regions that are not Mexico City. So that one is actually a better, how to say, a better
yeah,
movie for you to understand the reality that Mexicans have to go through. And those difficulties are suffered by poor people, middle class people, and rich people, no matter what. So it's not even like, how to say, oh, this is just how to say, a very contextual situation. No, this is just generalized. So this is
Yeah,
not uncommon.
that movie's box office was about double what they paid, what the budget was. So that movie was successful.
Yeah.
Whereas Amelia Perez ended up with less and ended up taking in less money than they budgeted for it. It's
Yeah, no, that's just the reality.
yeah.
You want to say they go walk, go broke, or something like that?
There's a lot that one thing you got to realize too, though, is I sometimes think, especially creative people, they're it's almost like they're creating not for the audiences but for each other.
Yeah,
Because
I've seen that.
yeah, and they also know, they also know, for example, I'm going to get, these are people who are going to hire me for my next job, so I got to make an impression on them.
Yeah.
Well, it's been good talking with you. Got daylight savings time coming up. I bet that's it. They don't have it in Mexico though, do they?
The one daylight savings?
Yes, daylight savings time.
I know they do, but it's always different than us. It gets super confusing because, for example, I think Sonora, one of the northern states, since they trade so much with Arizona, they were saying we're not going to change anything because we need to always follow whatever Arizona does because we're trading. We're such a strong trade partner, so forget about it. So it's very how to say, freebie kind of thing going on in there.
Yeah.
But they do have some change of, how to say, some daylight savings, just a little bit different than how to say, than the United States.
Well, that's one thing too. I'm scheduled. I had a guy on Romanian guy on. He's 8 hours ahead, but after tomorrow, he's only going to be 7 hours ahead. Which is why I've kind of avoided scheduling people just now, but we'll see what happens later. Well,
Okay.
Aaron, where can we find you out there?
Just on Twitter. Just follow me. My handle. That's what it's called. My handle is Adios. Okay.
Yep.
My handle is Ááron Sepúlveda-C. That's where you can find me. I post stuff about the economy of U.S., sometimes of Mexico, because my parents were Mexican. That's why I know so much about Mexico. And I speak Spanish, so that how to say, that's why I know so much about Latin America. And now, because of Milei, I'm posting stuff that are related to Argentina a lot, so that I can translate to my American friends what's happening in Argentina in a somewhat proper way. Because I've been following Argentinian politics for a very, very long time. And one of the reasons is because they have always had such a bad monetary system that there's always, for macroeconomists like me, Argentina is the best place to study because there's always something wild happening that you can write about it and you can literally learn about it. So I know a little bit of Venezuela too, but I keep it to... the only thing about Venezuela, if some of you guys might find it interesting, is I posted a little bit about the fact that in South Venezuela, in the mining towns, they started using gold, like the flakes of gold. They started using it as money for payments because they just didn't want to use. So those little things, you will see me that I have some expertise on in general of Latin America. Oh, including El Salvador, when they did the experiment of using Bitcoin, I was keeping everyone informed one way or another what was happening.
Oh yes, that sounds awesome. You're keeping everybody informed on what was happening. Yeah, this is the third or fourth time you've been on here. Well, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. People are giving my money at buymeacoffee.com. Check out my Substack, and thank you, Ááron Sepúlveda-Cué, and I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.